Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second artist talk today here in the Western Gallery at Western Washington University. I'm sitting right now with Lisan Kent, one of our exhibiting BFA artists for the 2021 BFA year. It's still surreal to me that that's the year. I don't know where last year went. But this exhibition, Material Mind, we have 12 exhibiting artists, and this week and next week we're doing artist talk where it's a moderated conversation with myself. I'm Tammy Landis, museum educator here at the gallery, but also curator of this exhibition. And it's a joy to be able to sit with these artists and learn even more about their work, especially now that it's done, it's installed, it's exhibited, it's off of your plate a little bit. For a little bit. So a few things, those of you that are listening in, so glad you're here. I think you're going to benefit greatly from learning a bit more about Lisan's work. And please, if there at any point you have a question, those of you that are watching on Zoom, go ahead and put that in the Q&A box. And my colleague, Chris, hey, Chris, thanks for all you're doing, is going to field those for us. And we'll bring those in with about 10 minutes left of this talk. And if there's no questions, we'll keep going through because I have plenty of things I know I want to chat with Lisan about. But please, if it's a technique, if it's a process, you're curious about anything at all, please take advantage of having Lisan here with us live in the gallery. And for those of you that haven't been able to come into the gallery yet, please go to our website and find a time to make an appointment and come on in and experience this work in person. We all know that there's nothing better than actually seeing the work physically versus the digital experience. But regardless, I'm glad you're here today because this is going to be a great artist talk with Lisan. I'm excited. So Lisan, congratulations. You're sitting in front of your completed BFA body of work.
I am, yes.
Probably feels like ages to get to this point, but you made it.
It was definitely like really slow and then all at once.
Yeah, you did it. You're here.
Yeah.
So let's view everybody in. So I know they're getting kind of a far away view of things and they've seen a few pictures, but why don't we start with square one? I didn't mean that literally as this is made out of squares. But Lisan, please explain to us, what are we looking at here? And tell us a bit about your work.
Yeah, so this is an installation of a self-portrait piece that is a mixed media printmaking piece. It is 57 individual slices of an image of a dual, well, there's two of me, there's two self-portraits. So, and there's 57 squares and they are split up into 4 different techniques or mediums. 3 of them which are printmaking, and then 1 of which is just charcoal drawing. Of the printmaking ones, there are screen prints, which are these ones, and then relief, woodcut relief, which are these grainier ones, and then way up towards the top, there are some photo transfers to stone lithography.
Yeah, you've decided on a variety of processes here. And I think it's really striking. It's a striking aspect about your work because sure, you could have done it all in one process and made it very easy to find. But I think when I go back to our conversation that we had in studio, you didn't even have this conceptualized yet, but it was important to you to utilize different processes of printmaking. Tell us why. Why did you want to, make this challenging for yourself and do so many different steps?
Yeah, so there were kind of 2 trains of thought. There was kind of the visual impact and then the like physical representation of labor, I guess. Specifically, I knew all along this whole year that I really wanted to work with stone lithography. It is a really, really time-intensive, energy-intensive process. There are large, heavy stones involved, and water and grease and all of this fun stuff, and it just takes a long time. And part of this physical process is reflecting like physical work that our bodies do, and that that kind of labor of
the toll it has on your body.
The toll it has on your body, and then also physical ability to do these processes, right? So thinking about ability in the body, these really time-intensive, really labor-intensive processes were at the top of my list to represent as a conceptual component to the work. And then the other printmaking mediums besides stone lithography reflect the physical process, because printmaking, no matter what you're doing, is a physical process, but as well as the visual impact. So with the woodcut relief, for example, it was a physical cutting of the material to create the image, and the kind of degradation of an image as well.
Right. So you can hear from Lisan, right? You're very in tune about the physical about this. So I think something that's important to talk about and move on to now, and a phrase that I remember from our early studio visit, you talked about the beauty and the reality and the limitations of the body. Right? Yeah. So let's talk about this, because there's a reason that you've decided to show, a dual self-portrait. Fragmented, you didn't decide to give us a very clear view. It's fragmented and pieced together with different processes that are physical. So let's break that down a little bit more to the conceptual side. Let's connect the material to the mind.
So my work is greatly influenced by Susan Sontag, and specifically Susan Sontag's writing about illness as metaphor, or illness in its metaphors. I think it's referred to both ways. And in that writing, Susan Sontag explores the social, kind of social implications of illness, specifically cancer and tuberculosis, I think. But in the beginning of the work, in the introduction, there's a paragraph that describes these two kingdoms, that there's this duality of humanity, that there is a kingdom that we all live in, that's the kingdom of the well, and then everybody but everybody also holds this passport to the kingdom of the sick, or the kingdom of the ill. And that no matter who you are or what you do, that you're always going to end up in both kingdoms eventually. And that was really interesting to me, the idea that that Sontag presents this hard duality. And because personally, when I think about like my experience with illness in my own body, and it's not a duality. There's no binary there, right? It's a whole different ballgame. It's this like in between, that you can be both at once, that you can be like, in this huge gray zone that's just, it's not even linear. It's
you use the word confusing. I remember writing that down.
Oh yeah.
Like you really wanted to articulate the confusion you still feel trying to understand your body and past illness.
Right? Yeah, definitely. And part of like my making of this work is like a catharsis, or like a working through of this confusion. Like when you're ill, like having that confusion of like what's going on, or like if you can't remember specific events, but also the like confusion of like healing, I think is very tricky, because I was always trying to define at what point I was healed, right? Whether I was going to come all the way back around to the point where I was before I got sick. So kind of like navigating that gray space.
Yeah. And I think that's really relatable to anybody. I mean, those that are listening in too, right? This idea of healing and illness, especially with a global pandemic happening, right? Like we are extra aware of our bodies and the limitations of the body, and it's very prevalent in society. So I think your work is very timely, but it's also very personal, right? So it's you didn't expect there to be a pandemic when you'd be making this work.
No,
necessarily, but I just want to say I think there's a really universal quality to people being able to come at this with their own understanding of the body, and to approach it, they're definitely going to see themselves in this idea of a body pieced together and healing and understanding of what is happening, during this year. So I think your work is going to hit people in lots of different ways. through the physical, through the fragmented. I think it's really successful in that point. So I want to talk about how you came up with this installation. I know you previously had different ideas, but it always had the image of you, the two images of you, facing to the side and then facing back. And I remember you sharing, you're like, it feels like a lot to show my body. So you've worked through a lot of different ideas for what you wanted to do here. How did you finally come up with this installation?
Yeah, so the idea of fragmentation is
Yeah.
a theme that I had worked with before, in taking a larger image and breaking it down and layering, and part of that came from some of my previous body of work that was more along the themes of like time and memory and all that. So when it came to crunch time and I was like, I have to, make a decision, and I want to make a decision that I can be like confident in and everything, it was really like, that gut feeling that, this is really what needs to happen. And, I went back and forth for a long time on what like images I should use, or, like how many works I needed to do, whether it would be one large one or a series of smaller images. And at the end of the day, I was thinking about how this experience with my body and all of these things that I was working with ultimately tied back into this theme of memory and time and all of that. So the fracturing of the image felt really appropriate to me at the time. And I just, went with it.
So now that it's up and you've installed it, what did you learn in that process of finishing this, installing it, looking at it now? I don't know, tell me what you gleaned from that experience.
Definitely that, like, it was that instinctual pull to make it what it is now, and that like sticking with that was probably the most important part, that I really just had to like go with what I thought and I knew instinctually what was going to be successful when it was installed. And there were, it wasn't all smooth sailing, but it definitely, that's kind of my takeaway from this whole experience.
Yeah. And those of you that are watching, you can kind of get a sense of the scale of the work by where we're sitting in relationship to the work. Like we're pretty small in relation to this. I mean, you made this pretty monumental. So, there's something to be said that you've projected your image to a much larger than life image, and we're interacting with it in such a different way than just like being able to understand it in one view, right? So there's, with your work, and you can kind of get this on virtually, but I do hope you come in person and see this. When you walk in the gallery, you see one thing, but as you move closer, you get to see a bit of the nuanced details. And I think my colleague Chris has been able to show some of those images of these details. So there's, just a completely different experience from the approach to when you're close up. Now, when you think about people coming and experiencing your work, what do you hope they gather, or what do you want them to see or walk away? It can be a visual or conceptual experience. Like what do you think about now that it's out in the open, right?
Yeah, I definitely,
it's vulnerable.
I definitely think that, I hope that people connect with it. I really do. I think that images are most powerful when they relate to personal experience, that connects to a human experience. I think that like when we think about shared experience or collective experiences, that it's really not that we're having the same experience, but that we're having so many individual, unique experiences that we can sympathize with each other and relate to each other. And that's really important, like for people coming into the gallery, that they can look at this and it's not just about me, it's about, this whole concept of illness. And I think particularly with the shared experience of the pandemic, like this, that it's really important that like relating to each other again through this shared experience is important. And I hope that this can be like a conduit for everybody's own experiences and navigating this new shared experience of there of this like gray area in between, because I feel like it's really been brought up in a lot of situations like, oh, I can't be, just A or B, I have to be somewhere in the middle,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really dynamic. So I think we have a question from the audience, so I want to make sure we acknowledge that while you're here. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind, could you go ahead and read that question for us, and Lisan will give it a go.
Certainly. This is from Richard. Says, truly remarkable work. The fragmentation is really effective. It seems noteworthy, though, that the face remains intact, whole. What's going on there?
Yeah, so the face is the focal point of the work. I think that faces obviously are relatable. We're human and we look for faces in things, and in people, it's our social cues. And the face is one of the pieces that's almost exclusively lithography, phototransfer lithography. And it was important for me to be readable, for it to be readable, because for the whole visual aspect of the work to look cohesive in a fragmented way, like the face, it was important that that was able to be read, because once you look at a face, you can understand that the face belongs to a body and that these other aspects kind of connect to each other. And I think that it's more especially noticeable because the second figure does not have a face, and it actually, I feel like the first figure is much more prominent, not only because it is in front of the second figure, but just in terms of like readability. You notice the first figure first because it has a face, because it has a gaze, and that it kind of leads the viewer into kind of a greater understanding of what the whole image is.
I love that you say it's your face, like how does that, right? You're addressing this being in this work, but it's you, right? That's really powerful as an artist, also to put yourself out there in this. But I would agree. I'm glad someone pointed that out, because I think the face does kind of connect all of this. I know something that you're interested in too was like the abstract and the representational, and absence and presence. And if you only taken a few of these pieces, you wouldn't know they're part of a body.
No.
And they become these beautiful images in themselves, but you put the face up there with them, and it does, create the cohesive understanding of what's going on. But it would be interesting to remove, a part of those and to see how this feels. You can play around with it a bit. This work definitely has potential to change and morph and be added to or eliminated from. So something else that I was thinking about, I made a note from our previous conversation. I just saw it. So, this idea of when you go through illness and your body has limitation, there's pieces that are left behind, there's not a whole, all of a sudden, our body is changed forever. And I think you even express this, it's not an understanding of going back to the way you were. Your body's just going to become different, healed in a different way. Is it ever completely healed?
Right.
And I remember that sticking out to me, and I thought a lot about that idea of, our body doesn't come back to the way it ever was, because we're constantly morphing and changing and aging, right? And I think that's really, really strong in this. And I don't know if when you look at your work, is there any pieces that really stand out to you that show elements of parts that feel vulnerable, or like that shows illness to me? Or when I look at my hands, that reminds me of this moment of this healing process, or I don't know. Do any of these speak to you a bit more than just an everyday viewer to come look at them?
I'm not sure if there are like individual pieces that stand out to me.
Okay.
A lot of my own experience with illness has been like completely like internal. So I don't have like a lot of external experience, like
That's
it's not
so
a
interesting.
broken bones or anything. Or things that are really explicitly visible.
That makes this even more fascinating, in relationship to you, that most of yours has been internal, but you're exposing the external as a evidence of healing in the body.
Yeah, well, ultimately it is about like the perception of the body and other people's perception the body and, even your own relationship with the body. You can't look at your own organs usually. And, that we get this like neat package and it's just what we get, and we just have to, that's the visible real part of it.
That's interesting. And I can look at some of these, and if I wanted to, I could be like, those kind of remind me of internal, like organic forms within the insides of a body too. Like if someone wanted to draw those connections, like there's anatomical forms that definitely resonate beyond what you're actually representing. So congratulations, you've really created a rich display here that can be revealed in so many different layers, even beyond what you anticipated. And I think people will continue to see this in such a different light, as you move forward and take this with you. So with that being said, what's next for you, Lisan? Are you staying in Bellingham? Do you want to get an MFA? Are you going to pursue, what's next for you?
Yeah, so I'm definitely taking a small break from school. I've been go. Yeah. But I do want to pursue an MFA. I do have big plans to continue my work in lithography and possibly become a master printmaker and to continue along those lines. Yeah.
Great. Exciting. Good. I'm glad to hear it, because I think you have a great start here, right? I think you've stepped into something that's working very well for you, and you clearly can take this with you in so many different avenues, and literally these different pieces can carry with you for a long time. I think there's a lot to be said here. So we are out of time, but Lisan, this has been a really good conversation, and I've really enjoyed connecting with you in front of your completed body of work.
Very exciting.
Yeah,
Thank
congratulations again, on completing your year during a global pandemic. There's a lot to be said. You can definitely pat yourself on the shoulder for that one. So thank you everybody, for listening in. Thanks for supporting our BFA artists and being a part of these talking series. And please join us tomorrow. We have other artists coming with us tomorrow, and then as well as next week. So go ahead, look online, look at the schedule, but also know that our outside community is welcome to come into the gallery, not just the Western community. Please make an appointment, come in, physically experience these works. There's something to grasping what we're sitting in front of here today in person that we just can't articulate well through the camera, through the lens. So I do hope to see you all here in the gallery. And thanks again for participating. We hope to see you in our other talks.